Hi, my name is Charlie. I live in Pittsburgh and am a working artist and writer. And my pronouns are they, them. And this is my story about my fear of snakes. I love to ask questions. I always have. I was the kind of sixth grader that actually paid attention in class, actually did their homework and turned it in proudly, actually studied for exams in the hopes of getting an A. Outside of school, one of my favorite activities was going over to my friend Lisa's house and watching movies. The Goonies was our movie of choice, and we would watch it on repeat, endlessly hypothesizing about how there could possibly be a whole ship still intact way underground like that. Now that I'm older and no longer in school, I focus a lot of my learning and curiosity on myself. I love to think about my own tendencies, where they come from, and how they formed. Recently, I've been fascinated with fears and why I harbor certain fears and not others. My biggest fear, believe it or not, is balloons. That particular fear I've tracked from a past life, and it still, for reasons I can't explain, has a certain hold over my present life. My second biggest fear is snakes. That fear comes from this life, and up until recently, I didn't give it much thought to its origin. Particularly when compared with balloons, snakes are a pretty rational fear. I never got an odd reaction when I said I was afraid of snakes. Until about 2 years ago, when I was working on a farm in Washington State. I was going about my farm business when I lifted up a tarp and saw, scurrying away from me, a small, greenish-gray gardener snake. My shriek brought my fellow farm intern running, only to have her laughing at me a couple seconds later. "I hate snakes," I protested. She laughed and she continued to laugh and pointed out that the snake I just saw was hardly bigger than my hand. She looked at me and said, "I've seen you calmly brush spiders off of your shoulder and gently catch mice to put outside. What is it about snakes?" I paused and then shrugged. What was it about snakes? Later that night, as I harvested some green beans for my dinner, a memory resurfaced. I was in the sixth grade again, over at Lisa's house for a sleepover. The Goonies played in the background as we sat and chatted on the couch. She had told me a couple minutes earlier that her older brother Adam was home tonight. He wasn't usually around. We both preferred it that way. As if on cue, Adam walked into the living room, followed by his friend. Lisa and I didn't speak, now absorbed in the movie we had seen a dozen times. Adam sighed loudly and sat down next to me. I leaned away from him toward Lisa. "Why do you two like this movie so much?" Adam said. "There isn't one person in this movie that's hot enough to keep my attention." "Then leave," Lisa said. Adam stood up then, gesturing to his friend, and they both walked out of the room. Lisa and I glanced at each other, relieved. But the relief was short-lived as Adam and his friend came back into the living room only a couple minutes later. This time, Adam had his pet snake wrapped around his hand. First, he went up to Lisa, pushing the snake into her face. "Kiss him," Adam taunted. Lisa, without so much of a grimace, leaned her head to the side and continued to watch the movie. After failing to get a reaction out of her, Adam turned his attention to me. I wasn't as well practiced as Lisa was. "Stop," I said, as Adam shoved the snake into my face. I raised my hands in an attempt to create a barrier between me and Adam. "Just touch him," Adam said, moving the snake around to get it past my hands. "Come on, stop being such a wimp." "Stop," I said again, this time curled into myself, as far back in the couch cushions as possible. Again, my words fell on deaf ears. I curled tighter into myself, resigned to staying quiet and waiting for Adam to leave. Finally, he did, taking his snake and his friend with him. After they left, I didn't look at Lisa, didn't move much from my curled position. I stared blankly at the TV as a deep fear of snakes formed in my subconscious. Charlie, you were right to be afraid in that situation. Nothing about your reaction indicates weakness. Having anything, particularly a live animal, shoved at you is an obvious breach of personal space, and a simple stop should have made him stop. It is rational and even important to have a healthy fear of people who do not listen when you say things, especially when it involves the words no and stop. I understand why your fear stuck to the snake. It was the most present danger, the thing you saw coming at you. It was what you worried might hurt you, squeeze you, or bite you. But this is a great time to do what we do best. Ask questions. What was the snake doing in this situation? It was resting passively on Adam's hand, and from my memory, also looked as though it was just waiting for the situation to be over. It didn't hiss or lunge or do anything besides try not to fall out of Adam's hand. So let's look beyond the snake. Who was doing the action? Who was eliciting your fear? I'm so glad my fear of snakes was finally challenged, because now I know that in fact I am not afraid of snakes, but rather of the boys who hold them, who push them in my face, who do not listen when I say stop. I'm afraid of the boys who taunt and terrify for amusement, who laugh as I bury myself into the couch to get away. I'm afraid of the boys who get into my psyche by using words like wimp, when in fact, I am not a wimp. Because wimps do not ask questions, especially not about things that scare them. And you do ask questions. You have the strength to ask all of the questions, even about the things that scare you.